r/ask Reddit. Teachers of Reddit, what is the smartest, most creative way of cheating that you've seen? I'm a high school teacher, but this story is about my own high school math teacher playing us and cheating. It was an honors algebra geometry class, and it was well known that Mr. D. Ray used the same questions every year, just change the numbers. He made a big deal about making sure we all gave our exam papers back to him after we had looked at our scores and gone over everything together to prevent cheating for the next year. Well, of course, some of my classmates got their hands on a complete set of tests from the previous year. Soon, everyone had a set. Before each exam, we would sit together and make sure we knew how to solve every problem on that test so we could do it on the real exam with different numbers. Years later, when I became a teacher myself, I saw Mr. D at a funeral. I confessed to him that this is what we used to do. He smirked and said, "Who do you think leaked the test packet to get you to study?" Mr. D had figured out that kids won't study if the teacher suggests it, but if they think they're getting away with something, they totally will. So he managed to get a test packet out and circulating as contraband. Blew my mind. College physics. Girl with a really intricate tattoo on her leg wrote formulas in between the tattoo lines. Even looking closely you couldn't tell unless you knew what you were looking for. You could tell it was test day because she wore shorts. There was a class that allowed you to bring one sheet of handwritten notes to exams. I knew a guy that created a font of his own handwriting and used to print the entire study guide onto a piece of notebook paper, front and back. He even set the font color to pencil gray and managed to get the margins and spacing exactly right to look like it had been handwritten. My girlfriend works for a dental exam company, which are obviously super high stakes exams. Since the exams are worldwide, they have actually found people from one time zone paying people from another time zone to email questions to them right before the exam starts. There's actually a movie with this same plot called Bad Genius, where a student takes a test in a different country that is a few hours ahead and texts the answers back to others that have the test in a few hours. Not the student but the teacher. So, the teacher, let's call him Mr. A, had a reputation for being a phenomenal teacher who had every student engaged, invested in his class. No matter how mundane the subject, anytime he asked a question, every student's hand would shoot in the air with them shouting things like "call on me" or "I know the answer." Simply, Mr. A developed a reputation in the district as one of its best teachers. Fast forward a couple years and I'm grabbing coffee with Mr. A and I ask him, "What's your trick? How did you get every student bought in?" His response, "Well, I told the kids every time we had a visitor in class, I need you all to raise your hand like I was giving away free candy. But if you don't know the answer, raise your left hand. If you do know it, raise your right hand. So I know who to call on and we all look good." Worked like a charm. My exams that used a graphic calculator TI-84 required us to show the examiners a proof of reset screen before the papers started, so instead of actually studying for my papers, I painstakingly redrew the proof of reset screen pixel by pixel in the TI-84's pixel art program and stored all my notes in it. During a spelling test, "Miss, how do you spell piano?" The spelling word was piano. Teacher went on autopilot and started spelling the word. I was grading a written assignment that had a 1,000 word count minimum, and one particular paper just felt really short to me despite Word telling me it was roughly 1,100 words long. On a hunch I hit Ctrl A and sure enough, after the paper concluded, there was a lot of white nonsense text on a white background. That's gotta be the dumbest form of lengthening a paper there is. If you email the document, one click foils the plan. And if you turn in a hard copy, the white text doesn't even count. My sister-in-law is a teaching assistant at her kid's school. Her youngest daughter, my niece, was 7 at the time. She stole the test the night before, pretended it was homework and had her mom help her with her homework, then sneaked the answers into the test. One of the other kids caught her, let the teacher know, and my sil, who was overseeing test conditions, died inside when she realized it was the homework sheet that she'd filled out. I was at TAFE for anatomy and physiology. The professor would ask for me to sit in on finals to prevent cheating. One kid came in with a vitamin water. No worries. Halfway through the test the professor noticed they kept turning the bottle and squinting. This goes on for another 20 minutes. Professor goes up, grabs the vitamin water bottle and rips off the label. It had a crib sheet written on the back. The students had gone to the effort to make a fake vitamin water bottle label and write notes in the back. The professor was impressed by the creativity and decided to give the student a 0 and not report them to the academic committee. A classmate was printing the answers on his paper in a eerie pale grey so that it barely can be seen. Still got caught because the teacher noticed him reading an empty sheet. I did this once in a college class. Sort of. The class was real analysis and there was one problem that was absolutely going to be number 1 on the final exam. It had been number 1 for every final exam this professor had ever written, of which he gave us copies to study from. And it was number 1 on the study guide for our final. I couldn't do it. I tried and tried and tried. And studied. And got help. And whatever I did I could not figure out the finer point of this specific type of proof given in this specific context. So I resorted to memorizing the steps and getting it down to a sequence of blanks I could fill in. Exam day comes. I buy 2 blue books that morning, test booklets with lined paper inside. In one of them I very faintly write the answer to number 1, complete with space to fill in the aforementioned blanks. On the front I fill in my name to differentiate it from the other booklet. When the professor tells us to take out our blue books and trade with the person next to us, I trade my blank blue book. I take the one I'm given and slip it into my backpack. At the same time I slide out my blue book with my calculator and pencil. So it all looked legit. I get my test. Number 1 doesn't fail. It is exactly as expected. I fill in the blanks and write over my words. I continue on with the exam. And I pass the class. Stretch a rubber band around a textbook. Write whatever you want on it. Then when you take it off the textbook, it'll just look like scribble until you stretch it to see what's written. Spanish conjugations drove me to do some incredibly unethical things. How would you use those without looking suspicious? You could say it's a fidget thing, but it's risky. High school kids recreated a Snapple label where the nutrition panel on the back had all the answers, formulas, etc. Only got caught because I'd never seen the flavor before and wanted to see how much sugar was in it. As a student, I remember when my entire year level was accused of cheating, as the test results came back consistently high. What the teachers failed to realize was that some of the answers were actually hidden in other questions. So if you got stuck on one question, you could find the answer later on in another question. An example would be, this was a Japanese language test, what does word mean? And later on, a question would use that word in context, so you would understand what that word meant. Used a text file on one of the original iPods. Teacher was fine with listening to music during tests. Made my life so much easier, lol. My teacher shared with us a story about how since she allowed eating during her tests, one person pulled out a giant bag of M&Ms and ate a specific color corresponding to ABCD. It was a 2-student duo and they only got caught when another student ratted them out. Edit. Grammar. In high school I was in a computer-based learning program and our science tests were taken digitally. However, they used a program where once you entered the test your entire screen was locked into the test and the only way to exit it was to click the finish button on the test or turn off your computer, which effectively did the same thing. Another feature of the program was that once you were in the test, anything you had in your clipboard, copied text, was not able to be pasted into the answer sections on the test to prevent the only other way to cheat. However, after creating my own classroom at home, making fake tests and playing with the program to figure out a way to cheat, I realized that it would allow you to copy things from inside the test and paste them elsewhere in this test. The developers of the program also did not take into account the sign-in screen where you have to find the test and enter it. Long story short, I could copy my entire page of notes I had taken on the test material, paste it into the section where I would enter my login information, then recopy it, enter the test and paste it again in one of the answer sections, using it to answer every question and then deleting it before clicking finish. One of my old teachers told us a story about a student who had rigged up a tiny scroll of paper in a wristwatch with notes written on it. He turned the scroll by winding the watch. He ended up getting caught because he was winding his watch so damn much during the exam. But the teacher loved the creativity. A classmate broke the screen and keyboard of his calculator and hid his cell phone in it, so it couldn't be seen from the teacher's position. The teacher approached him from behind and caught him though. So, not a teacher, but I witnessed probably the biggest cheating related scandal in our high school's history. For context, we had the sweetest old guy as our chem teacher. He called everyone bud or buddy or mom. He always helped. He volunteered to teach driver's ed after school so kids could learn to drive. He always had a twinkle in his eye because he genuinely showed love and kindness to everyone. A side effect of this was that he was very trusting. So one day, before finals, he ran to the bathroom during class while everyone was wrapping up their lab reports. While he was gone, someone ran to his desk, found the finals just sitting there, snapped a pic, and then ran back to their desk before he got back. Somehow, no one tackled, probably because 90% of our grade level in that class was on board with it. The pictures got texted around, but a few people were smart enough to Bluetooth into each other so it couldn't be tracked. Well, after the test, everyone had high scores and apparently someone confessed. This resulted in a huge investigation by the assistant principals, school police officer, and faculty. They traced every text message and busted so many people, all except the ones who transferred via Bluetooth. They had to reissue the test. Man, that was crazy. I felt so bad for the teacher. He was really sad someone had taken advantage of him and I was too. Such a good dude. Edit. Oh hot damn. Thanks for the gold. Edit 2. To clarify, the school didn't trace the messages. They just had 1v1 interviews with the school cop nearby so kids would feel pressured to snitch. Apparently a few cracked under the pressure, but if I recall correctly a fair number got away with it. Edit 3. Also, the cop was our school cop. Real badge, gun, car. He was just there to protect us against school shooters, bombers. He patrolled for loiterers, ran drug searches, ran security for after school events and pep rallies, etc. So, no actual police force was present, just this guy. I passed a pop quiz in high school by looking across the room and focusing on the top of the smart girl's pencil and trying to decipher if she wrote A, B, C or D after the teacher asked each question. It actually turned out more successful than I thought it would. Edit. Spelling. Hey, I mentioned how I cheated on a quiz. What did you expect? Semicolon. Also, I'm all about academic integrity when it comes to important higher education when relative to your field of work, but I don't understand loading immense amounts of needless information into young, hormonal teenagers and getting upset or surprised that they don't have the mental stamina to deal with it all and would rather cheat. Writing down math formulas and putting them in the instructions insert of the calculator. More recently, kids will put the answers on their smartwatches. It's to the point where I make all students remove their watches and place them on the classroom counter before the test starts. During a keyboard harmony lab exam, a room with 28 keyboards, one devious student had previously recorded another student's perfect performance of the exam piece on MIDI. In Outthrough, the cheater played the recorded piece on MIDI, but used all the right hand motions on his keyboard at the back of the room to try to fool me that he was actually playing it in real time. Unfortunately for him, the student he recorded happened to be my piano student, and I recognized the distinctive playing immediately. I didn't embarrass him during class by calling him out on it, but dealt with the problem privately, a lesson he told me later that would stay with him for the remainder of his life. I was supervising a final chemistry exam along with another coworker. Not 15 minutes in, a hand slams down on a desk and I turn around expecting the worst, only to see my coworker angrily shouting at a pair of really frightened 10th graders whose desk he smashed. Amidst the shouting I caught the words, "Morse code." The guy proceeded to take them to the office. I called a hallway supervisor to take over and ran after the group. Apparently, the kids were silently tapping the answers amongst themselves in Morse code, not even with their fingernails, just their fingertips. I never heard a thing. My coworker happened to catch B in Morse code or something. I honestly thought he finally went crazy solely because of his appearance. Picture Robin Williams in Jumanji going, "What year is IT?" I'm 100% sure that if this coworker weren't in the room, they'd have gotten away with it for sure. I had summaries of chemistry and a load of math formulas on my graphic calculator T83, and I had a backup on a thumb drive so that I could put it back after a mandatory reset. I used my programmable calculator to write a program for every possible math physics question that gave me every step of the problem solving sequence along the way. They always said show your work. I can name the worst, and I've definitely shared it before. But it wasn't my student, it was a friend's. She downloaded a worksheet for the kids to do while she was in a meeting of some sort. Kids found the worksheet's answer sheet online and proceeded to copy the answers. Last answer said student responses will vary, and that's what one kid wrote as his answer. Other times you'll see one kid misspell something or get an answer wrong, and everyone who copied from him has the same error. When I was in high school I bought a pen like this one where each time you clicked the message inside would change. I took it apart and was able to tape paper over the tube and fit things that I would need to help me on some quizzes and tests. If OP is a student crowdsourcing cheating strategies, then this is one of the most creative ways of cheating that I've seen. Not a teacher, but I used to lightly write the answers on a desk before the test with pencil. If someone calls you out on it before the test, then you claim that you're using the write the material down method of studying and didn't notice that it was marking the desk. After using the necessary material you just rubbed the pencil marks off of the desk, thus destroying the evidence. Not sure if this would work anymore, but if I had a paper to write on a book I didn't read, I would find a well-written paper online. Then translate the entire thing from English to German, German to French, French to Spanish, then Spanish back to English. Pull the original paper and the new one up side by side and clean up the grammar on the new paper and you've got the same concept, but written just different enough to not be plagiarism. Worked like a charm. We had one teacher, probably 2005-ish, who barely spoke English. A couple of the guys would just take an article, swap the first and last halves of each sentence and hand it in. Because he spoke the most broken English, he was Chinese. He wasn't able to distinguish it from proper English. This is before the anti-plagiarism tools we have today. Printing a fake water bottle label with test information on it. Back in mid-2000, schools here in Australia started to have strict guidelines on what could be brought into exams. Water was allowed, but must be kept in a non-labeled bottle. If you bought water, you have to rip off the label. In a lot of my college courses I wasn't allowed to use anything higher than a TI-84, so I took the guts of my TI-89 and swapped it into my TI-84. Never got caught. Oh shit, that's the way to do it. So, as a teacher, the smartest way I cheat is by giving the kids a noticard and telling them they can put whatever cheat sheet stuff on there they want. It tricks them into actually studying for their math tests. Also a pro tip from a math teacher. Most students don't know how to study for math and this is why they struggle. Think of studying math like practicing an instrument. You need to learn a piece by practicing multiple problems from skill set. If you aren't practicing at least 18 problems at least every day to 2 days, then you're never going to get past the little mistakes and missteps which have probably plagued you. Edit. Please stop asking if I'm your old teacher. It's 99.99% likely that I'm not. This is a very common trick that many teachers use and have been using for decades. As a student, we used to wear uniforms and leather shoes. As mine's a beta pair, I usually write on them with black ink pens, and when tests came, I angled it just enough to be seen by sunlight. Also, the edges of our uniform, button-down shirts, are filled with formulas. Asking teachers what the best ideas are, slick move OP. The best ones are the ones that the teachers didn't notice. In elementary middle school we had to write a paragraph each week featuring all the vocabulary words included in that unit. One clever kid wrote something along these lines. One day kid's name had to write a paragraph for English class. He sat down, picked up a pen and used these words in it. Proceeds to list out all the words. The teacher only let it go once because she never saw that happen until then. I'm not a teacher, but I heard a story from my friend of a teacher who caught 2 kids cheating through Morse code by blinking. During an AP US history tests in high school, we had a question asking about the author of a book. Kid raises his hand and says, "Mrs. I read, name of book, this weekend and I really liked it." The teacher, obviously forgetting that she had put this question on the test, replies with "Oh, by author's name, I love that book." The whole class bursts out laughing but no one says anything because she had just given us the answer to the test question, lol. Not a teacher but one of my friends in high school wrote all the physics equations we needed to know in really tiny font on Jolly Rancher wrappers. I had class in the AM with a kid who was a TA for my physics class the afternoon before. Weird period system at my old school. He would tell me the answers to app tests he had graded the day before and I would write them in black ink on the side of the sole of my black boots. I would then sit with my leg bent with my foot on my knee and read the answers during the test. You couldn't see them unless the light hit the ink just right. After the test I would just lick my finger and smudge the answers out. I remember a story from my OChem professor. This student all semester who wasn't showing up to class kept getting his score improved significantly after regrades. They got their tests back, had a day to review them, and were allowed to resubmit for a regrade. They knew he was cheating because of the unlikelihood of the grading mistakes on multiple exams, but the TAs who graded it couldn't confidently say it wasn't their handwriting. Ultimately it was an office worker for the department who figured it out near the end of the semester. His staples were angled different than the exams handed out that were mass stapled. He was recreating the test, printing it, re-answering it, and then grading it in the same pen as the TAs and had done a good job copying the writing style. Not a teacher but I used to use one of those rectangular erasers because the pencils the teacher gave us were cheap and the erasers only smudged the marks. The eraser came in a cardboard sleeve and I ripped it open and would write test answers on it, then erase it after exams for reuse. Music students using music sheets as answer sheet for slash from other student. Notes equals the same as the answer for Scranton tests. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.